man who used his car as a weapon, a 2-ton weapon, to plough into more than 130 people at Liverpool Football Club's victory parade has, as we know, been jailed for 21 and a half years.
What do you think? Fair justice, or is that sentence too harsh? The judge said the length was proportionate. Critics say it's longer than some jail terms handed down in murder cases, where offenders have been given a minimum term of just over 15 years in jail.
Joining us now to talk about this is Associate Solicitor Rojin Tasman, who thinks that the sentence is too harsh because it wasn't, she says, a premeditated act. It was a few minutes of complete madness. But the former president of the Law Society and Solicitor Stephanie Boyce says the sentencing is justified because more than 100 people were injured by one man alone.
Welcome
Rojin,
to you both.
Welcome to you both. Let's start with you. One of your clients was recently found guilty of dangerous driving, actual bodily harm, damaging property and possession of a weapon, got a suspended sentence. So when you saw the judge passing down the sentence yesterday of 21 years and 6 months, what was your immediate reaction as a professional in the business?
Yes, good question. So I've worked in criminal defence since 2016, so coming up to a decade. I've represented murderers and they have received a much lesser sentence than what he has received. I appreciate the fact that there is a substantial amount of victims in this case and there's many mitigating factors as well as aggravating, and his actions are inexcusable. I am not excusing his actions, OK?
No, we're talking about the sentence, not about the verdict.
Yeah, in respect to the conviction, that's not the problem, it's the sentence.
So it shocked you when you heard that?
And I would say it is unjustifiable, it is excessive. And that's just as a lawyer, in my practice, I've seen sentences, I've represented murderers who have received a much more lenient sentence than he has.
And is that partly because when he set out in his car that day, he wasn't intending to do what he ended up doing, but some kind of red mist descended on him. So you think that that's different from a murderer premeditatingly planning a killing and then carrying it out? You see, that's the key difference.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it makes a difference between another aggravating or mitigating factor. But it's more than that. You know, he didn't commit any offences for over 30 years. He's been addressed as the perfect family man, not a good family man, the perfect family man, a diamond. Everyone that knows him only has good to say about him. So really, if I was the victim, and again, I'm not excusing this horrific incident, but it's more of the, why did he commit this offence? How can we address it?
Right.
We're not excusing it. How can we address it? Because
Interesting.
what we've done is we've thrown him into prison. What's going to happen? He's going to, practically speaking, he's going to end up serving half the time, if not less, subject to his character in prison and behaviour, and he's released. Do we have a better citizen for the public, or is he going to get angrier?
Let's
address the offending behaviour.
Former president of the Law Society, Solicitor Stephanie Boyce. I think what a lot of people watching will think is he committed a terrible act and there was intent. That's part of the conviction. But remarkable that Rojin references cases where someone has taken someone's life by intentionally murdering them and they have received a minimum term in prison, which is less than 21 years. Can you just explain that for people watching who think you can take a life and serve less time?
Well, absolutely. Can I firstly say that my thoughts are with the many affected by this senseless act. To start with, the minimum term that Mr Doyle would have faced, my understanding is 12 years. But when you take into account the gravity and the scale, over 134 individuals affected, physically, psychologically, the trauma inflicted that will live with many for the rest of their lives, as well as the life-changing disabilities that some have suffered. So to put that into context, and I think I saw somewhere that somebody divided it up and said it represents about 3 months for every individual who's been affected. So if you take into account the gravity and scale, 21 years and 6 months is, I do not believe, is too harsh. It is proportionate in the circumstances.
That's interesting, because when you parcel it up like that, those who might think it's too harsh would probably think, I imagine, 3 months per victim is not harsh enough.
Absolutely. And, of course, there are some who say that some of those individuals did not suffer physical injury, but the psychological trauma, and it wasn't just the 134 individuals that we know about. There were 4 individuals who were trapped under this 2-ton vehicle, 2 children, an individual in their 70s. The scale of the panic that was caused, where individuals started to scatter because they thought, that it was a potential terrorist effect, and so forth. But we know from the victims' statements that were read out in court the enduring trauma of these individuals, and what this sentence will allow is, yes, it brings a sense of justice to them, but it will also perhaps allow some closure, that they can move on. But given the scale of the rehabilitation, the care and the support that these individuals will need.
Thank you both very much indeed. I wonder, Rojin, just finally, if there is a reason, therefore, to increase sentences for those who do take lives. For instance, those who drive dangerously or carelessly, but really only receive a punishment of a couple of years in prison when they've actually killed somebody by their driving.
So if a defendant is classed as dangerous, then there's an upscale on sentencing of up to 5 years. The point I'm making is we need to look at how we can address this issue, because sooner or later he will be released. He has the right to appeal sentencing, by the way. He has 28 days from the date of sentence if he believes it's manifestly excessive. But we need to address it, because what we don't want is for something like this to happen again.
Were you surprised, very briefly, were you just surprised that the defence didn't call a psychiatrist of some kind to explain this extraordinary...
I'm not going to make comments on any other representatives, but that is something I would have done. I would have instructed an expert and worked out why he did it and how I could help my client.
OK.
Thank you both very much indeed.